Hello everybody, welcome to Sound Editing and Mixing for Film, Week 1, our sound editing overview. Thanks again for joining us. This is week 1 of a total of 4 weeks. So make sure that if you want to have automatic reminders that you go to your Eventbrite, get tickets for each week, and then you'll get reminders and calendar ads so that you won't miss the sessions as they come up. So each week you can rewatch them right when we finish. You can rewatch them on the same link. And if you happen to not be able to attend one week, don't worry. You can go back, just get, every digital ticket link will give you all 4 weeks of access. So you can go back, watch it again later. That's the beauty of this. We're able to do that. So again, thanks for joining us. Just want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and we also have our library partners. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So this course is about sound editing and mixing for film in general. So we're going to look at narrative techniques, but also documentary techniques. So it's the general idea behind film. Now, I find personally, in terms of sound editing and post-sound work that I do, I really don't have that big of a distinction between the two. I really believe that, what you can do in a narrative film, you can do in a documentary film, and it's very, very similar. In fact, generally there's, documentary films can have a few more challenges, and we're going to look at both and, what that means for dialogue editing in documentary film, because there tends to be more noise. There can be some more issues with the dialogue in a documentary film, for example. So that's just something to think about, is that there can be a lot of similarities, and in terms of what's involved in sound design, it's a lot of similarities, and I think good sound design can work for any kind of film. If one of the first things I ask everyone to do is watch one of your favorite TV shows or documentary films, and just check out what is being done. And I think you'll find that the sound design and the concepts behind the documentary film and also the concepts behind a narrative film are very, very similar. The main key ingredients or the recipe for the sound design and sound editing is very, very similar for documentary film and narrative film. And that's what we're going to look at, is how do we achieve that? How do we do some of the sound editing? And what are the steps involved in doing that? So let's jump right into this. In terms of the software, we'll be using Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. You can also use Pro Tools. There's Pro Tools First, which is free, and you can access a lot of our YouTube videos. If you go to our website, tbmcs.ca, you'll see tons of videos. So we talk a bit about Pro Tools as well and Pro Tools work. And we'll have more of those in-person workshops as well with looking at Pro Tools. But in the meantime, totally free, Resolve, they have something called Fairlight. So Fairlight's a sound company that they acquired, and it's now part of the Resolve Studio. So the Resolve software. So you have their color grading, you also have something called Fairlight, and that's what we'll look at in terms of as we get into more of the sound design. Okay, so in terms of what we'll be looking at today, this is a general overview. So sound editing and design, we're going to define what that means. Sound editing essentials, what does that do? Dialogue editing, and the essentials, we want to look at what are the key elements, and we're going to start to wrap our heads around what do we hear, what do we listen to, and how does that work in terms of sound design and the overall mix and everything. Okay, so the dialogue editing, sound design elements, and music editing, and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. And I always, want to urge everyone, you can always just send me an email. You can directly reach me. It's Tom. I'm putting it in the chat here. tbmcs.ca. Send me an email if you have questions, technical, creative, about the sound editing and mix. As we get into that, send me your questions, and I'd be happy to answer them as soon as possible. Always within a couple of days, I'll get back to you, and we can have discussions about any kind of topics. And let me know if there's some burning questions. We can address them. We have a few weeks to do this, so I'm happy to get into that as well as we go. Okay, so what is sound editing? And this is really important because sound editing, it's really the process of refining, deleting, replacing, and replacing existing sound. And the goal, overall goal, and I think that's with generally with what we're doing here a lot in the digital arts programming and digital arts fields, we're trying to tell a story. So sound editing is just really trying to enhance and better tell your story in film or video. And it's essential because it's the time we can fix mistakes. So if there's like the wrong word, if I said, red instead of blue, we can look at fixing that. Here's another example. A loud truck going by, can overwhelm some dialogue. Getting rid of unwanted sounds in general. You hear a car alarm going off, and maybe you can try to get rid of that, edit that out. And then it could also be used to replace different takes. So you might say, the performance isn't great for a few words, or it's slurred. You can replace, those particular words with different words in a different take, and enhance it with a better performance, if you will. So sound design. What is sound design? So sound design is just like visual design. It's the concept of using specific sounds to create a certain feeling, environment, or style of sound. Sound design for film and video is a direct parallel to the video. And you're looking to enhance the story being told visually. And it can also be used to further tell the story of what is not shown. So this is the cool thing where, sound can be, you can have the sound of a helicopter, but maybe you don't actually see the helicopter. So those can be off-camera actions, it can be off-camera lines of a character, and it could, you can add more crowd sounds. So we're getting used to that, right now with sports, you see, virtual crowds being added, virtual sounds being added. This is the whole thing, enhancing the sound. So by being able to add more crowd or, off-camera things like a helicopter, you can really do some great things. So think about, it's a lot cheaper to have a sound effect of a helicopter, maybe free or it's a few dollars to purchase, than renting a helicopter, having it fly by. But if you want that effect, that's great. We can hear lots of typical sound design will be things like police sirens or, crowds in general. So you can make it look like it's a lot busier just by hearing a crowd. Psychologically, you think it's a lot busier. And that's really the cool thing is you can hear what you hear, you don't necessarily have to see. So you can save a lot of money even on a film by having those enhancements. But sometimes it's really important, like, you might, crowd applauding and things in the film. It wouldn't actually get recorded because you want clean dialogue, but you want to add the crowd sounds after. Just like police sirens, police cars won't have police sirens going, but you need to add it after. So you're just, again, enhancing the story. And those, I think, are good examples of how that would work and how you would do that. Okay, sound editing essentials. So here's some of the 4 main things you're doing in sound editing, and we'll look at today. So a cut, you're just cutting something out, literally cutting a piece out of the sound. So, if you don't like something, you're like, okay, I'm going to cut this part out of the sound edit. Then you're replacing. So you might replace a piece of the soundtrack with another part. So that could be, again, a dialogue piece. Maybe you don't like one thing that's said, so you're replacing it with another part. It could be how it's said. It could be, again, maybe it's slurred, maybe the wrong words, or if it's a scripted narrative piece, the wrong lines were said, but you really like how the shot looks, but you want to try to use a different piece from something else, and that's fine. How can that work, right? You can't sometimes literally just, if someone's talking, you see them on camera, but maybe they're talking, it cuts to another character, their reaction, and that's where you could replace some of the parts. So editorially, picture-wise, you might be getting things like that where there's notes from the editor, or you might be the picture editor too, where you're like, hey, I'm cutting to another person because I need to replace those words or that performance. I don't like that. So I'm cutting to the other actor's reaction so I can cut something else in there for that particular, the other character's shot, right? So that's that replacement idea. It could be, again, you could be replacing things within the sound effect. Maybe, police siren, you like the beginning and the end, you want to cut out the middle. And that's perfectly how it could work. So temporal, how do you can increase or decrease the amount of time a sound takes, right? So, you could be editing music to fit into a certain time. You could be speeding things up to make them sound faster. You can be slowing things down. So slow motion, maybe, you want to slow down the sound of a bird flying. So let's say you have a slow motion shot, right? And you see like the wings, so like, you want to have that slow sound. So you could be pitch shifting things to make them slower, so they sound like they're slowed down. So that's that temporal thing. We can do this with picture editing too, right? We can play with things, speeding things up, slowing things down, and that's a real fun part. Okay, enhancement. And this is where, you could be adding sounds to help smooth out the original sound and to help better tell the story. This could be adding sound effects or adding ambient sound just to make things smooth. And that's what you can do there, and that could be really useful. Okay, dialogue editing, and this is one of the key things, and we'll start to look at this today. Dialogue editing, because that's kind of the stage one. You want to dialogue edit everything, make sure you're happy with the different takes and the any kind of pauses or things that you might want to remove, mistakes, background noise, all that kind of idea. You could also replace different takes for different performances, as we talked about. For example, using the word hello from take 3 and putting it into take 5. Because hello was hello in take 3, really clean, and in take 5 is like, oh, you can't hear it. So that would be a real good example of what you might want to be doing to replace one to the other. And then what does sync sound mean? I'll be saying this a few times. Sync sounds what's recorded with the picture, right? So the sync, or it's also called source. So just some terminology. So we're like, oh, the sync soundtrack is there's too much noise in the sync. So you might totally rebuild it, replace it with something else. People are walking, there's a garbage truck going by, crushing the garbage, all the sound over the dialogue. So you might replace it all, put in, footsteps, put in ambient sound, and the original sync isn't even used. And I think that's always a really exciting thing, is when you don't even use the original sync. So that's what we'll look at, the dialogue editing and sync. Sound design elements. So what does sound design consist of? We start to look at what are the elements of sound design and how do they work, and what can we do with sound design. So it falls into really these 3 main elements, and it's short. You just remember DME, and that's again some terminology. You'll hear that a lot if you're working on things. DME: dialogue, music, effects. So again, think of dialogue, your original sync sound. It could also consist of voiceover, replace dialogue, such as ADR, which is additional dialogue replacement or recording, and that could be in a studio. So for example, if I did a line and I said, hey, taxi, I need to get to the airport, and then there's a lot of noise. So you bring that actor in to a studio or a place where you can re-record that, and you get them to say, hey, taxi, I need to get to the airport. And it's clean. So now you no longer have the maybe there's a police or an ambulance going by with someone screaming at the same time. So it's all not really usable, doesn't sound great, but you want it clean, you'll do that ADR stuff. A lot of films will ADR tons of the whole film just for that perfect clean soundtrack. So it's there's kind of a whole art to that, and it's a fun thing, and we'll look at how we can do that too in Resolve with voiceover features and recording. Okay, so then the next thing in the effects, right? So we have dialogue, the sound design elements. We have dialogue. Next, we'll look at music. So things like score, original score. If you think of like John Williams, like original soundtracks, scores for films. Then you get into source music. So let's say a band, you want to use their music. So that's source music. You're putting in a Beatles song if you have a few $1 million, but let's say you have a friend who's has a band, an indie band. You love their sound. They have a really cool song you want to use, so you could put in source music. Also, I've made a note here: singing performed by the actors. We're seeing a lot of musicals happening, Things like that can happen. So singing performed by the actors as well. So if you think of, Mary Poppins Returns, things like that. If they're singing in it, that would be part of the music as well. Then effects, you have a variety of sound effects. So we have sync effects to match the actions. So for example, if I take my coffee mug and I go, right? So I do that, but let's say you need to replace that, you're gonna need that kind of a sync sound effect to match that. It could be doors, car doors, opening, things like that. Then we have things like ambient background sounds. So, it's raining, so you'd hear heavy rain or light rain. It's birds, you're in a park, so you want to hear ambient soundtracks, background sounds of being in a park. You're in a busy street, city, you want to hear busy city sounds, right? So like New York sounds, Toronto sounds, things like that. Then we have Foley or human movement. And that's a real fun part. And we'll look at how we can do some of that stuff too. But Foley, human movement, a lot of it you can even just get as sound effects and edit them in. So that's a real simple way. You get whole libraries of people's footsteps recorded. You can edit that in. So Foley or human movement. That would be one of those things where, like if you're walking or cloth sounds, things like that. So again, together it's referred to as DME, dialogue music effects. Okay, so music editing. Here's one of the things that's a really key part, and we'll look at that in this workshop series as well, as music editing, because it's the process of creating pieces that are shorter, longer. Sometimes you need to put an ending. So this is a struggle. You might have a 6-minute, 20-second song, but you need to make a 60-second piece with it. So you're going to take a little bit of the beginning, a little bit of the middle, and you want the end part. But then music is music. You can't just chop it up. It might sound kind of weird. So you got to find the beginning. You got to look at some part of the middle that you can use, and you can look at the end. Then you have to have kind of an idea of how does music work structurally. So, bars. Do you have breaks? Do you have, and things like that. So whether it's score is a little bit easier if it's instrumental. You can really look at that tempo, counting things out, trying to make it fit. It could be a real challenge, a real struggle. So music editing is a very fine art, and it's an amazing thing, and you'll get more and more used to it as you go through it. Source music can be more challenging because there could usually be lyrics or vocals being sung as well, and then you have to look at how do you piece that together as well. So it's a real challenge. Think about a trailer you've seen maybe recently for a film. They'll use parts of sometimes really popular or famous music and cut it up so that there's like a 20-second piece where you hear some of the chorus, you hear some of this refrain, and it's like the best parts of the song in like 15 seconds just to get you hooked into that trailer. So that's that kind of music editing part. So how do we really start with this? So, I always say you have to make a sound editing plan. So this is really the key here, and this is what I'm going to challenge everyone to do from this week to next week as we start to get into some of it already today. But you want to start with identifying your dialogue editing requirements. So you've watched through the film, and you got to look at how good, how clean, how healthy is your dialogue track and your soundtrack. Like how great is that going to sound, and is it going to work? Do you need to replace anything? Do you need to re-record, like I mentioned? If there's loud noise over something, someone's like, hey, I need that secret hard drive with all the documents. If you can't hear it, it's not going to make sense. Or if there's like, meet me at 1 a.m. If you don't hear that, the story's not going to make sense. What did the person say? Meet me at. You can't hear it. Okay, we need to replace it. We need to make it work. No matter, if you've tried. There's some things we'll look at enhancing and fixing things, but sometimes you really just need to record a nice clean line. And that can be done quite simply, and you can even have the person re-record it themselves. We've seen things like that. You can send someone a sound recording kit. Now, sound recording kits are available from our library partners, so that could be something where you can set something up, get it over to an actor. They can record a piece of the line again. You can do this in a real kind of cheap way, I want to say, and that would be, how do you can just have the person say it and not worry about, watching directly into the picture, but you can look at maybe their, just they just say it, and that's called wild lines. And that's really fun, where they say it 4 or 5 times, wild lines, and then you should be able to sync it up to the picture. The next thing you need to do is define your sound design. What is the sound design of the film? Will it be natural? Will it be abstract? Will it be a little blend of things? Is it reflecting a specific genre? Is it like a sci-fi piece? And that's the whole thing. So if it's natural and realism is the key, that's great. Then you want real sounding sounds for your sound design. Now, let's say you're doing something like a comedy, and you might want like screwball comedy sounds, like boings, cartoony sounds, things like that. You need to say this is what it's going to be. Think of like a film like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, super fun, cartoon-like, and so on. Think of something like recently Cruella, the Disney film, a lot of interesting sound design, fairly realistic, but a lot of like music, a lot of over-the-top things sometimes, but not necessarily comedic. So you got to think about that. What kind of realm, where do you want it to be? And do you want it to be abstract? So maybe it's in a different world. Science fiction can be a little bit abstract. Maybe, it's the planet no longer has oxygen. So there's a different sound to everything. What would that sound like? Star Wars is a classic example where, okay, these new elements, ships and these different kinds of creatures and things, what are they going to sound like? So for those Imperial ships, don't know the exact name of it, but there's a use of elephants that were played backwards and stretched out to like so it's like elephant roars that were used in the sound design. So abstract elements, because what does that ship sound like? Nobody knows. It's a galaxy a long time ago in the future's past. So that's kind of these ideas of, if sometimes you don't know what it sounds like, what will it sound like? And sound design, if you're trying to enhance the story, think about a nature documentary. Sometimes hearing little butterfly wings and flaps could be really specific, and you hear like it's really loud and enhanced, like something's moving, or little footsteps of of an ant. You don't hear an ant walking, but you might want to create those where you hear like the little ant kind of walking by. So that's kind of defining what that sound design is going to be, what type of sound it's going to be, and that's a really immense task. And then you got to stick to that plan. What is that sound design going to be like? Then you need to make a list of sound effects or sound recording that you need to do to achieve this sound design. So if you need to go and record ant footsteps with like humans in high heels, or you need to wear high heels and walk and do like the little ant footsteps, or use your fingernails like I am, that's what you need to know. Okay, I'm going to record that. I need to get these sound effects. I need a street scene. I need a police car siren. I need fireworks. I need a jet blast engine. I need helicopters. I need kids laughing in a park. All these types of sound effects. You need to know a list of what you need to achieve that sound design in your film. How do you know what sound effects you need? Because we're doing it to picture. This isn't something we're just making up. It's not an abstract concept totally. It's you have your picture, you watch your picture, you figure out what do you need, what kind of list do you need. And we'll look at how we can do that. Okay, source or commission musical score. So maybe you have a composer that a musician, so you want to look at sourcing that, commissioning that, and so on. Do you need to get some what other musical elements do you need? Like, can you buy some stock music? What can you use? Stock, either score. Does it need to be original? Or are you going to get stock stuff too? A lot of stock music available that's quite great and fantastic. So you can always look that way. Also, but if you can, why not reach out to some indie musicians, composers you might know? Just reach out, because sometimes you can pay the same kind of money, and then it gives someone some great work to do, another artist that can collaborate with you and be part of that project in sound design. There's no other feeling than when you're working with a composer and you're working and getting these sounds and unique elements that are specifically for your film. It's quite an amazing thing. So always consider that. Maybe you can put You know, you're going to spend $500 on stock music. Maybe you can spend $500 on a composer to make a couple songs for you, and go from there. So then you begin your sound editing. I would say I like to always work with dialogue, work with music to see what's needed there, and then to start to build all the effects. So dialogue is always your key thing. That's really essential. And you know, start to put in some music, start to put in some effects. And that's kind of the order. It's almost the same way they say DME. It works. I find sound editing works in that same kind of pattern as well. So it's a interesting kind of you know, happenstance that it just you know, it just ends up being that way. Serendipity that you end up with DME, and you kind of work that way too. And that's the process of what it needs to look like as well. Okay, so let's look at what I'm going to do is, if you've joined me before for the some of the narrative editing class and things, we've been working on this one film that was done in a master class previously, and it's called We Do Care. And we did basically a picture lock from before. So this is how it would show up. You'd end up with a picture lock in Resolve. So I have cuts here, and I have my picture lock right here. So this would be the picture lock, and so on. So you know, this is great because we have everything here. So we have the audio. So we have all like the dialogue recorded, and that's all we need to start with. Just having the dialogue recorded and working with it in that way. So then what we can do is, let's look at the specific dialogue here. I'm just going to get some headphones on. So what we need to do is, if you watch through the film, and we'll watch it together. I'm going to start by you know, we're going to look at what is the quality of the dialogue, how does it work, this particular scene, what elements do we need for our sound design to make it work, and what do we need to add into it. Okay, so just off the top there, you can see right away we have some pretty decent sync sound of, you know, kind of footsteps taking off the jacket. So I think that a lot of that can be used, but we're going to actually enhance that and bring in that. So that's the first thing I'd put on the list is, okay, I need the jacket, I need you know, some footsteps to come in there. And typing on the computer, that's not bad because it's already in sync, and I think we can use what's there, and that's kind of a nice thing to be able to use what's there. And then we get into sitting down, and we're going to get into some dialogue shortly. So now, you know, what can we do there? So footsteps, so on. But now at the same time, look at this. We need to identify, where are we? So we're in this library. So here we are in the library. I feel like we'd want to hear a little bit of ambient sound too, maybe a little bit of some people talking. What else would you hear in the library? Start to imagine, okay, what do you need for your sound design? So, you know, at this point, you know, the footsteps coming in, maybe a little bit of people in the library. But one thing that I always find that I hear, if I kind of close my eyes, what does the library sound like? I always hear the scanner scanning books in. So I'll hear like that, beep, beep. Maybe a little bit of distant typing, beep, beep, you know, and like that's kind of what I always think of in the library, hearing the scan of books coming in. And, you know, so that's maybe what we'd want to have, is find something like that, like the books being scanned in and being returned. So that's kind of a nice element of what we can do. So we're gonna start to make a little bit of a list. So I'm going to say, okay, so we need the footsteps, we need jacket, we need library sounds, the scan, beeping, library sounds, crowd, and not probably too busy of a crowd. So we want to make it reasonable, but we can, you know, kind of, that's the fun thing with sound. We can control how much do we hear. Do we hear a lot of crowd? We don't hear a lot of crowd. And we go from that. So scan, beeps, and so on. Okay, so now let's carry forward here, and we're gonna hear a little bit of the dialogue.
Hi, I'm Barb.
Oh, thank you. As you can tell, I am struggling a little bit here. And
So there's a little bit. I'm just seeing that. I think the one. There we go. Let me get this all working now. I think we didn't hear her line there. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. Okay, so that part's just a little bit muted there.
I am struggling a little bit here. And making a little bit of noise, aren't I? Oh, my name's Jeffrey Lincoln.
Nice to meet you. And you are no bother at all. You know, your name sounds really familiar.
So you can hear there's a bit of noise there. So that would be, not that we're necessarily going to get that, but you can hear there's a little bit of a desk kind of moving in the background and so on. So, okay, so far we're at the computer typing. We'd keep those crowd ambient scenes, sound effects going, moving along, and in that manner.
Didn't you used to teach a creative writing class at U of T?
Yes. How kind of you to mention that. Yes, I taught for 25 plus years at U of T. Oh, I've been retired for a few years now, though.
Okay, so they're going to keep talking. I'm just going to move forward here just in the interest of time a little bit. So
Yes, likewise. And say hi to Diane for me. Well, listen, it's been so nice to meet you, Bev.
Okay, so here you can see he gets, they're at the desk, and probably some cloth movements here. I'd have a little bit of
Well,
that.
listen, it's been so nice to meet you.
So here, these are those things we need to identify.
Well, listen, it's been...
So you can see he's talking, but we have that cloth, the jacket. So that's something, again, that I would add, having a little bit of cloth movement and the jacket movements there.
So nice to meet you, Bev. Well, you have a great evening. Cheers.
And here he walks away. And so it's, we don't need a lot of stuff, which is great. She stands up, probably want to hear something like chair.
Wow, I better go help him.
Right, and it goes from there. Okay, so that's works, right? That's not too bad. We got something something going on there. Now, what we'll do here, let's go to clip attributes, and we're gonna make these just mono. Okay. Back here. Okay, so I'm going to make channel 1, channel 2, and kind of go from there. So that I just wanted to show, so in the clip attributes, what we can actually do is make these, stereo left, right, like that. And, it'll play out that way, or we can also make them like mono, which is always nice. Okay, so what I want to do next is we're going to totally make a copy of this project, so the picture edit, and I'm going to make a duplicate timeline, and I'm going to call it picture lock and stage 1, so dialogue edit. So you want to go picture lock, dialogue edit, and now we're dialogue editing. And now what I'm going to do is we're just going to move the picture up here, and we're going to go like this, and I'm going to add a track. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see if I can do all these. I'm going to, oops, there we go. They're all unlinked now. So now what I did there is right clicked, I unlinked them, and now I can move things down. So here what I'm going to have here is just dialogue. Right here, name, I'm going to call dialogue. And this one, I'm going to have sync effects. So what I'm trying to do here now is I'm trying to separate dialogue that's spoken and then the sync sound effects. So walking, typing, anything that I can separate and try to salvage out of the dialogue. So I want to keep dialogue editing. The first thing I want to do is keep all the dialogue clean first, step 1. Step 2, then we can start finessing the actual dialogue. So I want to separate sync sound effects with dialogue, and that's our really first step here in the dialogue edit. Okay, so that goes down here. Bunch of typing. That can go down here, right, into the, oops, let's rename this again, dialogue. I think there was just a little issue there. Sync effects. Okay, that can all go down here. Okay, now he's going to have a bit of a breath. So there I'm going to just use the razor tool. Okay, and then I'll leave the breath up there, but I'm going to take this down. Another breath. Another breath there. So we want to try and keep breaths on their own. So I'm just, we can see this wave file here, the waveform, like that little. Let's go back a little bit here. So we have that computer hit. So I want that separate. And we go from there. Okay, so now what we can do is if I hit solo, I can actually hear just his breaths.
Hi, I'm Barb.
Right, so that's all dialogue. And now watch this. If I hit solo down here, sync sound effects, we're going to hear just the typing. Right? So now I've separated. That's really like our first key step is dialogue, sync sound effects, separating all of that as much as possible and as clean as possible. And then I can figure out what do I still need on top of that. So this is that first step I like to do. And then you can hear it back in soloing.
Oh, thank you. As you can tell, I'm a little bit of noise, aren't I?
Okay, so that's fine.
I used to teach it.
Okay, so that's all dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. And then,
Oh, I've been retired for a few years now, though. Ah, I have great memories of those wonderful years.
Wow.
okay, and then he starts typing here again a little bit. So I'm going to grab that part.
Wow.
Okay, and again, so just any kind of typing, I'm going to get rid of that.
Wow. My sister Diane took one of your classes with what you were doing. Nice to meet you, though.
Yes, likewise. And say hi to Diane for me. For me.
Okay, and then we hear again some more typing. So we're going to put that into the sound effects. Click on that, bring that down. When he hears the ah, all that will go down, the typing, until he hears breath. And then another bang on the computer desk. So you can see I'm just going by these waveform files here. If I just zoom in, and what can be like a click on its own, and we'll just go solo, play it back, and make sure I'm just taking that part. That's pretty good. Just hearing the bang.
Well, listen, it's been so nice to meet you, Bev. Well, you have a great evening. Cheers.
Okay. And then that one I'm just going to put all in there. And there's the last piece of dialogue here.
Wow. I better go help him.
Right, and that way you can see now as we zoom out here, we have a bunch of stuff in the dialogue here, right? And we've managed to separate it through. I can see that better now. So right here in the dialogue, right? So we have all the dialogue up here. We have all our sound effects right down there, and that's the separation. So that's our first pass of really the dialogue edit, is to have dialogue only, our sync sound effects, and then we need to start assessing. Okay, what dialogue works, what doesn't work. I might want to find some different takes and so on. So that would be kind of the next step. So that's what we're going to do in next session. We're going to finish that dialogue editing. Then we're going to put in some music underneath it. And then we're going to start to put in the ambient tracks and the, some foley, and kind of keep going from there. So remember, dialogue, music, effects. So that's our first step of the dialogue editing. And yeah, that was quite successful. We were able to pull a lot of things. That's kind of our goal here, is how much can we keep the sync sound that will still work, and in the actual film's interest and the goal of the film, and to help that story. So the typing, the banging of stuff, some of the walking we'll be able to use. And then we're going to just keep adding more to it. And then same with the dialogue, like what can we use there, making sure it's clean. We're going to start to cut out some parts that get noisy, and that kind of idea. So we watched it through, we made our sound design plan. I need some footsteps, I need jacket, cloth movement, I need library sounds, I need sound scan beeps I want. I'm going to need some more computer sounds. I think some more banging sounds for the impact sounds, we'll call it, impact hitting computer. That sounds like a pretty good thing to do. So yeah, impact and hitting the computer, and keep going from there in our sound design. And then some music. I'm thinking, there could be a little bit of music, there could be a little bit of ambient music maybe, but some score would be kind of nice to bring us in, bring us out of the scene. So that'll be our sound design. So we did that. Next, we did our dialogue edit. So we got right into here. We separated the sync sound effects from the dialogue, and we've made everything, pretty much ready to go in that manner by having the two tracks. So we have our dialogue track, we have our sync tracks right there. So that's perfect. Yeah. So that's really good position to be in. So yeah, we got our sound design plan, started our dialogue editing, and we go from there. So if anybody has any questions, I'm just gonna we have a moment here. We can address anything, please email me, tom@tbmcs.ca, if you have any technical questions, creative questions. And what you can do is, take any kind of, if you have a bit of footage, anything, you can shoot a bit of footage on your phone even, bring it into Resolve, and then you can practice building the same idea. What does, put a few shots together. What do those shots need? Come up with a plan, come up with an idea, get a few shots with some dialogue, try to separate the dialogue from something happening. So, have some action moments, walking around, create a scene that you can do some sound work too. And you can also, again, this could apply for a documentary, same idea. You'd watch it through what works, what doesn't work, separating it through, and we're going to get through a documentary sound design as well. We're going to kind of, get through these and see, what's possible in both realms and areas. So yeah, that's perfect. Now, again, just want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, we have our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, this was week 1. Want to make sure you keep joining us for weeks 2, 3, 4. We're going to flow through this, so finishing dialogue, getting in some music, working on all our sound effects, all the way through to a final stereo mix, all in Resolve and Fairlight. That's going to be the focus of here of what we can do. So that's fantastic. And yeah, please check out our website. If you have any questions, you can email me. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. So have a great rest of the day and talk to you soon. Take care.